One thing that we say to marketers quite a bit is you have to imagine, for us as creators, when we evaluate working with a brand and how they show up in our world, it's very similar to us showing up to a party with our close friends and bringing a friend.
Right.
And everyone in the room is like, why did Samir bring this guy Steve? He's kind of strange and I don't get how he fits in here. If I do that over and over, then you're probably going to stop letting me have a +1. And then eventually maybe you'll stop inviting me to the party.
Culture doesn't wait for your planning cycle, and it certainly doesn't care about your brand deck. Today, the audience is the boss. So to win in 2026, brands must stop interrupting and start connecting. I'm Josh Spanier, VP of AI and Marketing Strategy at Google, and this is Frontier CMO. Joining me today are Colin and Samir, the definitive voices of the creator economy and advisors to the world's largest brands. We discuss the shift from the attention economy to the connection economy, why one-off ad placements are a legacy trap, and how brands move from being sponsors to characters in a creator's universe. If you've ever felt like the brand world and the creator world are speaking two different languages, this episode is your translation. Here's my conversation with Colin and Samir. I was actually flying to Singapore like about 3 weeks ago, and I was reflecting on this because I watched the entirety of the Seth Rogen Apple TV show, The Studio, which is a love letter to Hollywood by Hollywood people. It's a very long flight. I watched all 8 or 9 episodes. And what was really striking to me was within that series, all about content production, YouTube creators featured once. And it wasn't a disparaging talk down, kind of, they were the butt of the joke. And it just kind of blew my mind in basically 2026 that that's the case. And I started thinking about, as a marketer, speaking to you as from the marketing side, I spent my whole career on the other side of the table, commissioning, working with creators. There is a kind of unofficial hierarchy where directors, writers, producers are on a higher level than creators. And I was just wondering if you sense that when you deal with marketers as they approach you, and whether there is something more, or what can creators do more to elevate to the proper status of where they should be in the industry today.
I actually think that's a product of how people consume. If you're consuming a lot of creator content that you deem valuable, especially if it's on a television screen, I don't think you talk about creators in a disparaging way. I don't think you see them that way because you understand the value that they bring to you. I think thinking of a creator as someone who's creating something very low lift, maybe just taking a photo and posting it on a social platform, that's sort of like a maybe outdated version of what people think of when you hear the term influencer. I think that's where you get those disparaging comments of like, oh, this content is not worthy of people's time. But I think it's actually like, that's sort of a misunderstanding of where the value comes from and where also creators have come over the years and the types of content that they're actually producing.
Yeah. And I think in The Studio is a great example of like, change is not easy in industries. I grew up here in LA. My first job was in Hollywood. Like, what we do is very dramatically different from what has happened historically in content production. I remember when I first came across YouTube, it was this moment in college when everyone watched this Jenna Marbles video. And for people who don't remember, Jenna Marbles is a comedian. She made this funny video into her MacBook of this face that she would make when like a guy approached her at a bar. And it was very funny. And it was shared and it was on everyone's laptop in the school library and everyone was watching it. And I craved being in Hollywood growing up. And I remember looking at that and I was like, I want to make stuff that results in this, that everyone is talking about, that everyone is sharing. And it was the first peak for me of being like, oh, I guess if I have a good idea and I just shoot it into my MacBook, it can have the same result. I still think we're coming around to this reality that happened in terms of Hollywood, like reacting to, what do you mean? You can just come up with an idea and then just make it and then just put it out there.
And that people may actually like it because of the way it was made.
Right.
The fact that it was just shot into a phone adds a layer of value that some people don't understand, that you can actually feel closer to the person, that you're closer to like the source of truth and what they actually wanted to say because of the way that they chose to shoot it.
I think what was maybe missed was that creators are, and especially unscripted creators, are the natural evolution of reality TV. That when The Real World came out and on MTV, that was different. That was actually a budgetary constraint that created, instead of making a scripted show about kids who just graduated college, they had to make an unscripted show because they didn't have the budget. And that really created what we know today as reality TV.
The evolution of the platforms and the change in our culture and society is fascinating. So I'm representing the marketing side of the equation here. I personally think there is a crisis in creativity happening within the marketing industry today. The CMOs of today, the marketing departments of most of the large organizations are built on the principles of advertising from the 1950s and 60s and 70s. And so it's been a massive step change to embrace that there is a different way of working, new ways of actually getting content out in the world. And we're still wrestling with that. Then you throw in AI in the last couple of years, and the entire industry is sort of trying to find its way through this new paradigm. And into this, I think creators play this incredibly role of there is unbelievable creativity on YouTube and other platforms from creators. So do you sense this creativity crisis on the marketing side and when you deal with CMOs, when you deal with brands, when they come to you relative to when you speak with creators and as your own creators yourselves?
I would define this more as like a confusion in where taste lies now and who are the arbiters of taste. Because I think what happened with the rise of creators is that audiences became the curators of what was good. And what is traditional in Hollywood or in another system is that there was a group of executives or a group of people who got to be the arbiters of taste and say, that's good, we're going to finance that. That's not good. That's good. And all of a sudden, that system got pushed to the side and anyone could make anything. And then the audience became the curator of what was good. There's a democratic system of if it's good, people watch it and share it. If it's not good, nobody watches it. And I think from a marketing perspective, there's a loss of conviction of what is interesting and what is good, where the 50s and 60s was led by really creative individuals like the Ogilvies of the world and the Mad Men era. If you look at that, of there was people who had conviction in what was going to connect and what was taste. And I think when that has now been put into the hands of the audience, I think marketers operate at a place of fear of missing the mark, where the audience is all of our bosses now. And the only one who can fire us as creators is the audience. Right. And so we're all looking at the audience and trying to make sure that we're making stuff that is going to connect. So I think there's not necessarily a creativity crisis. I think it's more fear around getting fired by the audience or missing the mark to the audience, when I think the people with conviction right now are creators on the internet. Creators who have been making stuff for 15 years or 10 years or 5 years, who are chronically online, who are members of the audience.
I would say whether they even want to take part in creating the conversation or they want to work with creators, they should be audience members first so that you even know where to place your bets. If you look at advertising in magazines or on television, the pipeline was controlled. So when you had a hit, you knew that's the hit. This is the one place to spend money. Now, I think one of the most beautiful things about YouTube is there are certain creators who they don't even know are going to upload a video. There was this amazing documentary about bird watching that came out this year that this guy spent 2 years working on, put it on YouTube and it exploded. No one knew he was going to do that.
Yep.
Right. So there are elements of YouTube that are incredible where there's this creativity coming every day. And this is across all social platforms where you don't know what's going to be a hit that day. But at the same time, if you're a true audience member of these platforms, you start to recognize the creators and the niches on YouTube and across platforms that have consistent excitement, energy, viewership. And I think it's your job as a marketer now to understand and find those pockets.
Can you just speak to, you've worked a lot with a number of brands. You've done your own brand partnerships. You've been doing this for 14, 15 years. You publish a whole bunch of other content. You do the training programs. Mm-hmm. You have your newsletter and information about the whole creative economy. So how do you describe yourself to Fortune 500 companies, or if you ever end up at Sun Valley or Deer Valley or one of these fancy places, how do you introduce yourselves and what you do in totality?
Historically, it has been hard to describe yourself as a creator. I don't think it's hard anymore to describe yourself as a creator, which is amazing. So I think at the core of it, we say we're creators, but what we really talk about is that we break down and analyze the creator economy from the inside out. We're practitioners, right? We have been creators for 15 years. We continue to solve the problems that everyday creators solve. And that's why we host creators on our show and on our platform, is because it's kind of like actors on actors, right? Like it's this peer-to-peer environment where we are exploring the new media landscape and translating it from the inside out.
It's the Publish Press.
Publish Press, yeah.
If anyone who's listening to this podcast is not subscribed to Publish Press and they work in marketing, they are not doing their job, I think. So but say a little about it.
Yeah. The Publish Press is a 3 times a week newsletter where we cover 3 stories in each edition about what's happening in the world of the creator economy and mostly why it matters, right? Like from a curation perspective, again, from the inside out, we are creators ourselves. So we're going to select stories that we think matter in this world. And we're going to tell you about what's going on, why they matter.
I think it's one of the best places for creator discovery. When we talk about how you should be a true consumer and you need to know who are the creators, what are the different niches within the creator economy, I think this is like the Published Press, I would consider the front lines of that conversation.
And then within your own productions, I mean, you guys put out a lot of content yourselves. You're experimenting with AI yet, but it's not central to what you're doing?
I think it's definitely central.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely made its way in over the past year, especially when it comes to concepting, scripting, research. Even from a workflow perspective, when we film one of our episodes, we use a tool called Autopod that will cut all of the angles according to who's talking. You know, that's something that used to take half a day to an entire day of time. And now our editor can do that in about 3 minutes and move on to the story and to the B-roll.
I think the best use is like, honestly, having a collaborative partner with Gemini of like, hey, what are the gaps in this, right? So if we're researching a topic, it's one of the greatest tools to go, tell me everything about this topic.
I've definitely used Gemini to ask about you two. So,
right,
you know,
right. I'm sure
we use it to ask about ourselves.
Yeah. For sure.
You guys know the creator economy better than anyone. Write about it every week. Talk about it every week. Just give the audience, give me an overview of where the state of the creator economy today, as you guys see it.
If you just look at the mediums, like, and where our content is viewed, it's representative of the state of the creator economy. So when we first started, most of our content was viewed on desktop. That moved then from 2011 to 2014. We started producing a lot more for mobile. But at that time, when we were making YouTube videos, we'd make a 30-second or a 45-second video. That was totally fine video to upload to YouTube. Long form content was like 6 minutes long at that time. And I remember when we would talk about like making a long form series, like 6 to 7 minutes. And by 2014, we started concepting series. We're like, oh, maybe we should make like a series. Like, what if we treated this like a season that people could binge? And I think this was around the same time where you looked at, in entertainment, people were launching, Netflix really introduced bingeable content. And I think as we look at where the creator economy has gone in the past 10 years from there, the fact that YouTube is the most watched app on connected TVs is mirrored with the fact that creators are making long form content today means 30 minutes. And it means repeatable formats. If we look at a creator group like Dude Perfect, they make repeatable formats that are 22 minutes plus that are viewed by millions of people on connected TVs. We are TV show producers. We're showrunners. We're making shows that you can take, and if, I was just on a Delta flight, you can take Michelle Carre, Challenge Accepted, put it on Delta as 6 episodes, and it makes sense.
Yeah.
Every episode has the same format. We operate like studios. Even when we're looking at our content calendar for next year, we're trying to build series and events out of our, drops of shows. And those then get sold to marketers as packages of, hey, you can be a presenting sponsor of this. You can buy media around it. We will produce ads that you can run as media around the content. We have just evolved from, what was experimentation to now adopting something that is much more familiar to the world of marketing, the world of television, the world of studios.
I would say when I look at the creator economy, I think the thread that stayed consistent, and if anything is increasing, is the desire of audiences to interact with the content. I think that was something that even from the early stages, Samir and I knew that we were not just making content for an audience, we were making it with an audience. We'd put out a video, we'd get their feedback in the comments, we'd get ideas from them of what we should make, and then we'd deliver on that idea. And that created a relationship with our core audience of trust, of, hey, they're listening to me. And that was in the early stages. And I think what you're seeing now is that, especially when it comes to live streaming or podcasts, there is an incredible desire to take part in what's happening on screen, specifically with the creator, to comment in chat. And make sure that you can see yourself represented in what happens.
But you guys, you just mentioned it to me. You have a content calendar. You're planning out your year. There's the CEOs of a business, and there are opportunities for brands, for marketers to engage with that. How much of your slate, or however you want to call it, is sort of once it's ready, once you think you're building what you're going to build, you then go out into the marketplace, or how much of it is organically? You just call up someone at Adobe who you've worked with before and go, hey, you want to do this?
It varies. Like, I think that we still operate as creators with a level of experimentation that, like, I can sit with you right now and we could put something out next week that I have no idea we're going to put out because we have an idea and we decide we want to make it into a short. That still happens. And that's one of the great things. Like, we can just do that if we want. But I think all of us as creators are operating a little bit more with that foresight into what's going on with our slate. And it's more advantageous to the business too, because our ideal scenario is we build really deep relationships with a few sponsors versus what we looked like 5-6 years ago was more like that. Hey, next month I have a slot open. Maybe I could find a D2C brand to come in and sponsor it. But now the whole industry has changed in a way where we can have a presenting sponsor for a series, where we can have a category sponsor. One thing that we say to marketers quite a bit is you have to imagine, like, for us as creators, when we evaluate working with a brand and how they show up in our world, it's very similar to us showing up to a party with our close friends and bringing a friend, right? And so if you bring someone to that party,
right,
and everyone in the room is like, why did Samir bring this guy Steve? He's kind of strange and I don't get how he fits in here. Like, what does he bring to the party? If I do that over and over and have no context to my friends of why I brought Steve or why, Steve doesn't add any value to the party, then you're probably going to stop letting me have a +1. And then eventually maybe you'll stop inviting me to the party.
So I've heard you guys talk about being strategic, like treat creators as also strategic entrepreneurs.
Yeah, for sure. I think sometimes we get treated as talent, but we're distributors, right? We have to think about how an audience is going to react to what we put out there. We're not just show up and get on camera. Like, we're sitting in a room thinking through what's going to connect. So we're also the studio executive. Right? We're the studio executive, we're the producer, we're the director, we're the writer, and we're on camera, and we're overseeing the edit. So, bring us in at that stage, at the early stage, where you're like, this is what we're trying to do. What do you recommend?
And I think a lot of the reason we like the category exclusivity or the like ambassadorship type model of, the year-long relationship is because you're actually getting to a point where you're communicating and improving in lockstep with the brand. A lot of times if you just do this one-off deal, creators often don't even get data back. They haven't built that relationship and the brand hasn't built a relationship with the creator to say, hey, here's how this actually went, but here's how we think it could go better. And that's what I really like about the year-long relationship is once you know that your value props are aligned. We always say for us, like, to educate and empower the next generation of creators is a big part of our value prop. A lot of the brands we work with have a very similar value prop. When we work with Shopify, that's a similar value prop for them. So we know we're in lockstep, at least on that value prop. So let's work together over a long period of time to figure out how to best deliver messaging and improve.
How giddy were you when you got your first real branded partnership deal, and who was it for? Do you remember?
Well, I remember the first one that came through and it was for no money. The exchange was just, we will give you these Felix Gray blue light glasses. And there's a funny email exchange between Samir and I. And Samir is like, well, I don't know if we should do this. There's no money involved. And I'm like, I just want the glasses.
Yeah, Colin's like, we have to do this.
This is absolutely worth it. And we put so much time into that video for Felix Gray that came out on our channel. And I think the good that came of that is that it was our first opportunity to experiment with what it even meant to create some sort of integration, to work with a brand and to deliver that to our audience.
How often today do you get inbound requests for effectively no money or pittance on $1 and
Never.
Just basically?
Yeah. If we do, I don't even see it.
We do get asked this question from creators, early stage creators that are like, should I do a CPA campaign, like a cost per acquisition campaign? And my belief system from Felix Gray, where we did that for $0 and Colin got blue light glasses, to the next deal, which I think was probably Audible or Squarespace or one of those early stage conversion brands that was very conversion focused at that time. And I remember feeling like it felt bizarre to me that it was so conversion focused in the first 30 days because like this brand was a part of our creative and a part of our content. At that time, forever, we weren't going to take it out. It was just, you're part of this. And I remember thinking it was very bizarre that we were getting treated like Facebook ads in a way, or like performance marketing, that it was dollars in, dollars out. And I think in podcasting that started to work. And so it came to YouTube. But we started to graduate, even for us internally, we just looked at it and said, how do we want this product to show up? What is our ad product? And I think that's the work for creators of when you do, let's say you take one of those free deals early on, or you take a CPA deal. I would never advise to do it. But if you do it, the only reason to do it is to develop your ad product and then to put that in a deck and go to market and go, now I know what is a good ad product for my audience. This is the ad product I'm comfortable with. And I think having conviction in that for creators is really important. And that's what we started to develop. We were like, you know what? We think there is a good ad product here. As we started to put the podcast on YouTube, there's a presented by slot. There's a natural integration that will give you and talk about the brand. There is a CTA link in the description. And then if your success metric is conversions, then I have to actually be really familiar with where people are landing. So I'm saying all of this to recognize the relationship that marketers and creator groups have to have, right? With different goals. I do think we're entering the era where people are recognizing that awareness and consideration can happen through creators because we are the celebrities of today, right? That if we're being watched at millions and millions of views and impressions for long periods of time on a connected TV screen, like we are the stars. So what you used to do with a celebrity, which would never be considered, performance marketing, it was always consideration, awareness, and lift. You can also do that with creators. And the bottom line, I'll say it over and over, probably more in this podcast, like communicate what success looks like to the creator early.
I want to make this practical. List off the 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever it is, like golden rules of you need to tell marketers to work well with you, to work well with creators.
Yeah.
I think it's that first one of like, ask the question, what does success look like? What does success look like? And do you have examples you can send me that were successful in the past?
I would say number 2 is become a member of the community. Super important because again, as a marketer, you have to be able to empathize with what it's going to be like to receive your message. And if you become the member of the community, you recognize, oh, that's what it feels like to receive a message from a brand in this context, in this show, as a member of this community. Look at what people are talking about, how they're engaging with each other. Like these are real diehard communities because it's interactive media.
When you say community, do you mean the Colin and Samir community, or do you mean the YouTube platform or TikTok platform
Well,
community?
one of the golden rules is join the Colin and Samir community for sure. But no, whoever you're going to work with, if you're evaluating, Brittany Broski and wanting to sponsor Royal Court, watch Royal Court.
Yeah, because if you want to show up at the party and be cool and be accepted, you probably have an idea of who's at the party and what they talk about and
what happens at the
about.
party.
What else do you think works or helps your best ones?
Develop a repeatable format and have some conviction in it.
Doing your part to make sure that you're not just interrupting, that you're elevating the experience. I've been actually surprised how few and far between it really is when you work with brands when it comes to them delivering you visual assets or having a visual world for you to work with. Often creators are sort of rebuilding their own graphics and visual language for a brand within these integrations. And I think there's a lot that brands could do to arm creators with visual assets that can create some consistency.
One of the things we've talked about inside of Google marketing is about how everything is media everywhere all at once. Every surface, every touch point, every interaction is an opportunity to create something engaging. I want to transition into, you've talked about the moving away from an attention economy to a connection economy. Yes. Expand upon that.
So I think if you look at the eras of the internet that we've gone through, like I deeply remember first going online with AOL and Ask Jeeves and then eventually Google. And it felt like this like information era where I couldn't believe I could get access to information. And that was what publishers were giving, was information. I could search something and get information. It was an amazing time. The next chapter, I think, was brought on by social media and social networking, which was the information wasn't just about cities and countries and geographies. It was about people. It was about our friends. It was about other people we had never met before. And that brought in the attention economy, which was, maybe a celebrity can be born on the internet. And I think today, if you look at information and attention, those are pretty available. And I think all of this came to a head for us when we produced a YouTube short that got 41 million views. And it was about the 3 oldest videos on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Fun, short, listicle. 41 million people watched it.
Wow.
But I took a step back, and both of us took a step back. The obvious decision as a media company would be, cool, now we make these listicles as shorts.
Let's make the 3 longest videos on YouTube. Let's make the 3 shortest, the 3 most viewed.
Yeah. Let's do this listicle format, until it doesn't work anymore. But we took a step back and we were like, is anyone going to remember that video? Attention is interesting, but attention without connection is actually not interesting to us. And that's when we shifted our focus and said, how do we produce memorable minutes for people? And that's when we started to invest into live events. Our first thing we started to do was a series called Coffee with Creators, which is just take over a coffee shop, 100, 150 creators show up. We create a framework for people to connect with each other. And that's like getting back out in person with people, I think is extremely important to understand that connection in a world where like attention is starting to become available to a lot of people who can navigate how to tell an exciting or interesting story, or how to keep your attention of, let me tell you what the 3 oldest videos on YouTube are. You're going to want to know the 3rd once I introduce the concept. And that for us is like long form video, repeatable formats, ways for the audience to engage, and then live events.
There's something super fascinating, interesting, and all marketers need to think about and unpack. But this notion of connection, building engagement, it's what we want to do with our brands. We want to create the unfair advantage that when you go into the department store or the wherever it is, you're going to reach for my product, not for someone else's product. And the brand is often the differentiator. How can brands do this? How can they build better connections, either through creators or overall? I mean, you guys are brand builders in your own right.
I think it's hard to think of this, but first starting with identifying the groups that you want to speak with and starting to understand those niche communities, right? Like the first thing we ever did was write out the 3 categories of the audience that we wanted to speak to. And we wrote it out as, okay, there's aspiring creators. There's people like us who have always wanted to make this their full-time career, but haven't really figured that out. There's professional creators, people who are making their full-time income as creators. And then there's people who work in the creator industry, people who work in and around the world of creators, maybe people who are curious about creators. And those were our audience segments. And we would look at that and go, okay, what emotion do we want to evoke out of each of those segments? And that's where we started to explore, like, okay, we want them to feel educated. We want them to feel empowered. We want them to feel inspired. What's the action we want them to take? Okay, we want them to press publish. And that's where we came up with that term from a branding perspective. So all that to say, I think it's coming back to the fundamentals of who are we trying to speak with? The reality is these groups that we just talked about, even 5 years ago to now, each one of those groups I just mentioned to you lives in a different section of the internet and consumes differently. So you start to recognize, like, where do these people exist and how can I create depth with my intended audience that's not all going to be the exact same format?
And I would say if you're trying to reach them through creators, the next step, obviously, once you identify your audience, is how do creators show up in my universe? And how do we show up in the universe of creators, which is getting to what we were talking about earlier of, when we have a video and the Shopify ticker is there, they're showing up naturally in our audience, in our community, in our world, in an interesting way. When they throw an event and we're there, we're showing up in their world, right? So thinking about those 2 sides of how creators interact with you.
So Samir, in this world of connection economy, how do you measure it? How do you prove something to a marketer, to yourself, that this is actually going to have a business return or some sort of positive impact?
I think for us, one of the obvious metrics that's like data, empirical data, is watch time. We can tell you if we're connecting both on watch time and comments. Are people watching for a long time? So like just about 50% of our viewership comes from connected TV, and on connected TVs, people are watching for 48 minutes. That shows us, like, all right, people are really watching this. Comments, did an episode spark conversation? Are people actually talking about this?
I would say another data metric that we use is returning viewers. So within our YouTube studio, within our backend, because 10 million views is great, but if it's 10 million different people every month, that's not engagement for us. That's not like a true community.
That's a super important metric that shows the true connection. One of the challenges with large scale platforms is they're serving up what they think will be the most interesting video. And even if you subscribe to someone, it may think that some other piece of content is going to be more interesting in the short term, keep more retained. So if you can see that on the back end or the front end, however you want to call it, that makes sense.
From a marketer perspective, I would say, again, you have to define what success looks like for you. If connection is conversions, if like a lot of people are trying something, if a lot of people are talking about it, if people just have a better sentiment towards your product, like I think that has to be defined. And then again, workshopped with the creator of how can we achieve that?
I think an area where marketing departments actually can help creators is we actually have invested a lot in data science, quantitative analysis, and actually sophisticated modeling. And we've proven unequivocally that when we work with creators and we match it up with sort of regular ads, when you get the mix right, we drive better lift, better brand incomes, and more sales. And we call it internally the two-voice model, the creator and the brand. And that mix works really, really well, proven scientifically to our CFO's approval. That's a big win for us. This podcast is called Frontier CMO, recognition that we are in uncharted territories. We need a new map, a new navigation. Talk a minute about where you think the creator business, the successful creators, but project out 2028, 2030. Obviously, technology is going to change. There's going to be lots of other factors, but there are probably some fundamentals we've already spoken about. But what do you think the next big things are? You said you were planning your 2026. You're thinking about stuff for 2027, 2028 as well in terms of change of everything. So what's the frontier for creators and for you guys as well?
Something Colin brought up that I want to reiterate is the continued path towards interactive media. I think video games have taught us a lot about depth with audiences. Stories are meant to be played, not just watched. And in 2028, I think we're just deeper in that world of interactive media. I think even if you look at a feature YouTube is testing right now of your custom feed, I get to speak to my algorithm and tell it what I want to see and change the way my suggested content shows up. I think obviously we can assume that playing with Nano Banana Pro is fun.
And where am I comfortable with people sort of playing with the bounds of my brand? Like where is it okay to sort of push and play within the universe, whether that is, if you think about, again, Shopify with having a mascot, like what are the elements that people are actually going to be able to play with and move around?
Over in the UK, there's a gentleman called Mark Goldbridge. He is a incredibly passionate Manchester United fan. And, we all have our faults. However, he's built a wildly successful business and he's just signed the Bundesliga, the German league, and he's going to be live streaming Bundesliga games on YouTube. It's a fascinating changing of the guard. And one of the things I'm seeing that live streaming, live shopping, social shopping on YouTube and beyond. And I think as marketers, we need to see that where this is going and actually understand that.
I think in 2028, you'll also see a change in the guard when it comes to scripted content. I think historically, what you see on YouTube and across social is what Samir was saying earlier. It is this evolution of reality TV. We're used to seeing unscripted, low barrier to create, low cost. But that's coming, and it already has come to social platforms. We were with a creator a couple weeks ago, large creator named Stephen He, and he's just shooting 22-minute scripted episodes because you can now. And with people sitting on their sofas ready to watch episodic scripted content now on a platform like YouTube, once you open the doors to creators actually being able to produce it at the right cost, like it's going to create this next wave of scripted episodic content. And I think brands can be the studios for that content. You're already seeing this on short form. There's a company called Built that's making a show called Roomies, short form scripted show. So I think you'll see brands being the studios there, and you'll probably see new models of product placement, which obviously exist in film and TV, but are not as common on YouTube right now.
I think one of the challenges that a CMO, I would imagine, will face is pace. Pace is very challenging right now. I think even something I've noticed is that spend trails like a year behind culture.
Right.
And I think the pace of culture is getting so fast that I would imagine there's an anxiety to move quickly on things, but quickly inside of a brand is also slower than culture. And, being late is not interesting. And so if you are reacting to a moment from the year prior, you might just continuously be trying to catch up.
Makes sense. So Inside Google, we have this mantra in our marketing department, which is know the magic, know the user, connect the two.
100%.
Marketers for 70 years, 100 years have said we obsess about the customer, we obsess about the viewer, we obsess about the people buying a product, and we don't enough. And so what you're describing is really you follow your audience. You need to know where they are, why they're consuming whatever they're doing, and then you can't show up relevantly unless you understand what they need and what they're doing and what they want.
You need a chronically online person on your team.
Yeah.
And you need to listen to them, right?
So final question. We've been talking a little bit about the future. I want each of you, if you would be so kind, in 2028, what might be a side hustle that Samir is doing, in addition to your ongoing work, knowing him?
How much time? Do we have another hour?
And then Samir, what will Colin's side hustle, maybe that it's going to turn into a real business by 2028?
Got it.
I think in 2028, Samir has licensed his name, image, and likeness. And there's every version of Samir. There's gardening Samir. There's woodworking Samir.
I like it.
And they're out in the world making money in their own interesting, unique ways.
Okay, like multiplicity.
And then there's like a Samir Con where they all meet up. And then it's going to go public.
That's funny, yeah.
We're just living in Samir's world by then, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
on the flip side, I would say Colin has probably launched a boutique coffee shop and breakfast sandwich place that's it's not expanding anywhere outside of like maybe his van that he has. Yeah. But he opens up the trunk, and you can get a breakfast sandwich and a cup of coffee. And it's very community focused, and it's very, very neighborhood focused.
Someone has subsidized it, and it's all free.
And it's all free.
Yeah, and it'll last for about a month and a half.
But it's really well branded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. People will talk about it.
Good graphic design.
What is the perfect breakfast sandwich you're serving?
It's just bacon, egg, and cheese on a roll.
That sounds, bacon butty. Sounds delicious.
Yeah.
Before we head out, I want to do a couple of rapid fire in and outs. Seems appropriate, right? So I'm going to read you some in and outs. I want your gut reaction, and then we'll move on. First one, are you in or out? The client sends you a brief that says, we don't have a huge budget for paid media. You have to make it go viral.
Yeah, out.
Yeah. I think virality is a byproduct of good creative. It cannot be the product that we sell. It's a byproduct of us making a great piece of content.
Okay. In or out? The client hires you for your unique voice and then sends a scriptwriter along with you to the shoot.
I think that one's a little bit nuanced. I think like not necessarily on our own channel. I'd be out on that. But like there are times when like there are great writers in the world who are great to collaborate with.
One of my themes for 2026 for marketers is to be braver, to actually take on a little more risk, to actually accept that there is a creative part to this whole business. No one knows quite what's going to work, exactly when it's going to work or how it's going to work. And you got to be brave.
Yeah. For sure.
Is there a piece of content that you believed in that you thought was going to blow up or just be successful and it just didn't?
Every video we made in the first 3 to 4 years on our channel.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Okay.
Yeah. Every time we published a video in the first 3 years, we were like, this is it.
People just don't get it, man.
Just nobody cared. But that's also representative of like the time it takes to find your voice. It takes a long time to find your voice, find what works. And it's a commitment and a practice. And it's just showing up every day and getting a little bit better at navigating the world.
Show up every day.
Yeah.
Navigate a little better.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you so much. Really appreciate you being on Frontier CMO.
Thank you.
Great conversation. Before we wrap, I want to leave you with 3 takeaways to carry into your week. These are your field notes from the frontier. First, the pivot from attention to connection. Many marketers are still chasing vanity metrics, millions of views on a video that fills time but leaves 0 footprint. Colin and Samir argue that in 2026, views are cheap, but brand is rare. We have transitioned from an attention economy to a connection economy, where the primary metric of success is memorable minutes. Stop asking how many people saw your ad. Start asking how many people remember it. True connection happens when you move from being an interruption to a participant. Whether it's 500 people at a live event or 1 million viewers on a connected TV, the goal is the same, shifting from fleeting attention to depth, which is durable. Second, leverage your unfair advantage. Too many brands treat creators like a traditional media buy, handing over a script and staying at arm's length. To win, brands must identify and offer their unfair advantage, the unique assets, locations, or IP that only they can provide. Don't just give a creator a budget, give them access. If you're Red Bull, it's an F1 car. If you're Target, it's a physical store to film in. If you're Shopify, it's a physical sales ticker. When a brand provides a tool that elevates the creator's story, they stop being a sponsor and become a character in the creator's universe. Third, the audience is the new CEO. You cannot market to a community you aren't a member of. Marketers need to be chronically online. To gain conviction, you must listen to the two-voice model, the harmony between your brand's message and the creative's native understanding of their audience. In the frontier, the audience has the power to fire you. Your only job is to stay relevant to them. That's the challenge for today's marketing leaders, operating at cultural speed while protecting the credibility you can't afford to lose. Thank you for joining us. For research, case studies, and tools to help you lead in this AI era, visit thinkwithgoogle.com. It's where we track the signals, challenge the noise, and share what innovators are testing in real time. We'll be back next episode with another leader building the future while the rest of the industry watches. Until then, stay sharp and stay out in front.